Today we're looking at Resident Evil, PlayStation Itsenjobai Joshido made by Capcom. If you played this game alone, late at night in the mid-90s, you probably remember the dog, the one that crashes through the hallway window, the first time almost everyone dropped the controller. Let's go back to Itsenjobai Bashijo. That December, Capcom released a game on the Famicom called Sweet Home. Most people don't talk about it anymore. It was a Capcom Toho collaboration tied to a Kiyoshi Kurosawa horror film of the same name. The producer was a man named Tokuro Fujiwara. He'd come over from Konami years earlier. By the early 90s, he had Ghosts and Goblins and Bionic Commando on his resume. He was senior staff. In Itsenjobai Joshisen, Fujiwara wanted to take Sweet Home's concept further. He didn't direct it himself. He handed the project to a 28-year-old. That guy was Shinji Mikami, business degree. Joined Capcom in Itsenjobai Joshi right out of school. Started in planning. He just finished a couple of Disney SNES titles. Fujiwara figured he could tell a story. Capcom in the mid-90s was in a tough spot. Street Fighter II had run its course. SNK was eating their arcade lunch. The company needed to find its footing on PlayStation and Saturn. Mikami sat down and played through Sweet Home start to finish. Then, he made his calls. Keep the bones. Fixed camera. Item management. Multiple endings. Environmental puzzles. Throw out the story and characters. Build a new one. The internal codename was Biohazard. The big technical decision was the camera. The PlayStation didn't have the polygon budget for both detailed characters and detailed environments at the same time. Mikami's solution, pre-render every backdrop as a flat image. Lock the camera. The player can't rotate the view. This sounds like a constraint imposed by the hardware. But once the camera was locked, the source of fear changed entirely. You're not afraid of what you can see. You're afraid of what is just outside the frame, what you can hear but can't look at. That is where survival horror's whole aesthetic came from. The opening live-action sequence is something a lot of players still remember. It was shot in Canada in the summer of Itsenjobai Joshiwu. Tiny budget, a cast of amateur actors. The guy who played Chris Redfield, Charlie Kraslovsky, said in a later interview he was paid around $1,500. He thought he was filming a commercial. The acting is famously bad. Stiffline reads, awkward staging, cheap dubbing, but that exact roughness is what turned the intro into a cult classic. People love it because it is so bad. There is another name on the credits worth pointing out. A young planner on the project in his mid-20s named Hideki Kamiya. Yeah, the future director of Devil May Cry, Okami, and Bayonetta. Back in Itsenjobai Joshiwu, he was an unknown. The dog through the window scene was reportedly his idea. This is where he was cutting his teeth. March Arsha R. Itsenjobai Joshido. Resident Evil shipped on PlayStation in Japan. Famitsu gave it Senja-sen out of Sishi. Edge gave it Joe out of Shir. It sold Aryal copies in Japan its first week. The North American box, when it shipped a week later, had 4 words printed on the back. Survival horror. Capcom's American marketing team coined the term. The category didn't exist before that game. Everyone uses the words now. What players actually remember is harder to put on screen. It is the feeling of playing alone at 2 in the morning, walking between save points with your shoulders tight. Always low on ammo, always rationing ink ribbons for the typewriter. Asking yourself every time whether this save was worth burning a ribbon for. It is the moment you hear something behind you in the hallway and you can't tell if it is footsteps or something else. A lot of games tried to copy that tension. Almost none of them got it right. The next 10 years were Mikami's peak. Resident Evil R in Itsenjobai Joshiba, with Hideki Kamiya stepping up to direct Resident Evil Sen the following year. The Launsen Ninar GameCube remake of the original, then Resident Evil C in Launsen Nin Wu. Still talked about as one of the best games ever made. There was an incident before it launched. Capcom had publicly promised the game would be GameCube exclusive. About a year later, they announced a PlayStation Launfu version. Mikami went on the cover of Famitsu, shaved his head as a public apology, and let them photograph it. The fan community still talks about that. Some thought it was unprofessional. Others thought it was the only honest move. Either way, that was Launsen C. Mikami started looking for the door. He and Kamiya and a group of others left Capcom and started Clover Studio. Clover lasted about 2 years and shut down. The same crew regrouped and founded Platinum Games. Mikami didn't stay long. In March, Lanshanli Nishi, on his own, he opened a small studio in Tokyo's Nishi Shinjuku district, Tango Gameworks. A few months later, it was acquired by ZeniMax, the company that owned Bethesda. From there, Mikami made The Evil Within and Hi-Fi Rush. His teacher Fujiwara took a different path. Fujiwara left Capcom around Itenzyobai Joshilil. He started a small company called Whoopee Camp and made a couple of cartoony adventure games. The studio closed in Itenzyobai Joshijo. He tried again in Liaoninsen with a studio called Game Republic. They made Genji on PSR and PSN and Folklore. Game Republic shut down in Liaoninsen. When Fujiwara handed the survival horror baton to Mikami, he was trying to raise a successor. 30 years later, the apprentice has gone further than the teacher ever did. The teacher's two studios both folded. There is one more turn in the story. Meiji, Liaoninsen RCC. Microsoft publicly announced it was shutting down Tango Gameworks. Earlier that year, Tango had released Hi-Fi Rush, universally loved, called the year's surprise hit. Didn't matter, closed anyway. Mikami himself had left Tango more than a year before to start something else. So what got shut down was the name he'd put on the door. In August, a Korean company called Krafton stepped in and bought Tango out of the closure. Kept the studio running, a small reprieve. That spring of Itenzyobai Joshilil, in the mansion, the dog crashed through the window. 30 years on, the series has sold 160 million copies. It is Capcom's biggest IP. The dog is still there. The people who made it have changed signs over their door, generation after generation. Follow me. See you next time.